Okay, we should be live. Just one moment. Okay. Welcome, everybody. No?
No, I'm only seeing the black screen.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to start video. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for bearing with us as we were going through some technical difficulties. James, I'm going to invite you to start your video. One moment. All right, great. Thanks, James. I can see you. I'm going to move us to sharing the screen. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to this iteration of Texas Talks Art. My name is Kathryn Hall, and I'm curator at Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with our newest Texas master, James C. Watkins, who is coming to us from Lubbock, Texas today. So thank you so much, James, and welcome.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I have just a couple of things that I'd like to speak about before today's talk. I wanted to let everybody know about Texas Talks Art. Texas Talks Art is a multi-institutional initiative intended to introduce the work of artists across the state of Texas to a wider audience. The series features 50 Texas artists and artist collectives in conversation with 50 Texas curators in virtual 30-minute lunchtime talks every Tuesday at noon. And all of the talks are free. I encourage everybody to visit texastalksart.org for a list of upcoming programs and more information. And before moving on, I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our generous supporters of the Texas Talks Art programming, Deborah Dupre and Richard Rothberg, McGinnis Family Fund of Communities Foundation of Texas, and Tatum Art Advisory. Thank you all so much. And for those of you at home who would like to tune into this series, here is a look at the upcoming talks. The next happening on February 16th with the Nopolis in Dallas with Sofia Bastidas at SMU. So please make sure to tune back in to texastalksart.org to stay tuned next Tuesday. So I'd like to take a moment and introduce James. James, we're very honored to be able to be speaking with him and to host a solo exhibition of his work at Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. And we have just announced that we will be reopening this Thursday. So I invite you all to come see the exhibition in person. And you can go online to our website at crafthouston.org for how to register. We're asking that everybody wear a mask when they come in, and we are limiting the number of people to try to keep to COVID safety protocols. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce James C. Watkins. HCCC recognizes James as our newest Texas master for his more than 40 years as an outstanding ceramicist and educator. James received his MFA from Indiana University and his BFA from the Kansas City Art Institute. Based in Lubbock, Watkins taught architectural ceramics and delineation for 35 years and served as Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Studies in the College of Architecture at Texas Tech University, where he received the honor of Paul Whitfield Horn Professor Emeritus. During his tenure at Texas Tech, Watkins received numerous awards, including the TTU President's Excellence in Teaching Award. In 2005, as a senior Fulbright scholar, he built a ceramics program in Vietnam at the Ho Chi Minh City University of Architecture. Watkins has also written for numerous publications, and he is the author of several books, including his recent autobiography, Reflections Made of Memories, that was published in 2019. He is also the co-author with Paul Andrew Wanless of Alternative Kilns and Firing Techniques, many of which techniques you'll be able to see today. And then finally, Architectural Delineation, Presentation, Techniques, and Projects, which was published in 2001 with his co-author, James T. Davis. His work has been featured in 40 solo exhibitions and 164 group exhibitions around the world. He has pieces in 23 permanent collections, including the White House Collection of American Arts at the Clinton Library in Little Rock, Arkansas, the Shigaraki Institute of Ceramic Studies in Shigaraki, Japan, and most recently, the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington, D.C., and the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, where you can currently see one of his pieces on view in the new Kinder building. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to James, and I'm gonna take a moment to pull up the slideshow that we've prepared. We're actually gonna be doing, through this talk, we'll be able to see some slides as well as be able to see some of the works up close in person that are on view in the gallery. So thank you so much, James, for your time.
Thank you very much. I feel honored to be given this opportunity. Thank you.
It's been a long time coming, working in the making. I feel like this time last year, I was in Lubbock, and I had the opportunity to see your retrospective at Texas Tech University, which was such a treat. And many of the pieces in this show were also featured in that show as well. And I have to say, I really wanted to be able to show our audience today this fantastic piece, Guardians. It's a double-walled cauldron. And this particular double-walled cauldron was made in 2015. James, I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit about how you kind of came to building this form?
Okay. Well, it goes back to my childhood. I grew up in a farming family in Athens, Alabama, and my mother and grandmother, they washed clothes in big cast iron cauldrons, and they also made hominy, and they made soap, and they made a type of meat loaf called souse. It's also called head cheese. And so my job was to keep the fire burning around the pot. And when I started making pottery, I wanted to make large bowl forms on tripod feet. But whenever I would fire them, they would warp in the kiln. So because they had 3 feet on the bottom, the top would end up being triangular. So I tried everything. I tried making them thick. I tried with a real thick rim. But then one night I had a lucid dream. I dreamt that I saw my work in Santa Fe and they were double walled. And I went up and touched it in the dream, and I figured out how it was made. And so that's how it all got started. And then I started incorporating other ideas, like the carving comes from my experience working with my father on the field, plowing the fields and looking at the furrows and finding it to be very aesthetically beautiful and interesting to me. So I put all that together. And then living in West Texas, we have migrant birds that come through the winter. And I was interested in looking at sandhill crane and the Canada geese. And I started incorporating those forms on the rim. And I also have a black belt in Taekwondo. And there's a concept in the martial arts called relaxation and explosiveness. So I wanted to work with the appendages on the rim in a sculptural way to capture a sense of movement and energy. And so I'm putting all those things together in that one piece.
That's great. And I did want to kind of show people, these are some shots of you in your studio that David Pike took that kind of gives people an idea of what that double-walled form looks like as you're building it. Which, I mean, you can really see just even using your own body for scale, just how large these pieces are. And I want to take a moment just to, I'm going to spotlight some live footage that we have of the piece so folks at home can be able to see really just how all the wonderful details of this piece. And James, could you speak a little bit about the Sagar firing process that
Okay.
you used to produce the beautiful kind of gunmetal black coloration that you have on the surface of this cauldron?
Okay, so it has a slip on the pot called terra sigillata, and I make it from a combination of dust that I collect from dust storms that take place here in West Texas, and mixing it with other elements. And I put it on the piece and I buff it with a cloth until it begins to shine. And then I wrap it with paper. And I also put sawdust in it, and I put it inside of a metal container. In this case, I had a metal container built by a machinist because it's a very large piece. I put it in the container, put the lid on it very tight, and then fire it to about 1500 degrees. And the smoke saturates the slip and it becomes extremely black.
You can really kind of see that in these photos that we have here, where
Yes.
you have the piece in the toilet paper and then kind of what it looks like upon coming
Yes,
right out.
and it begins to get really saturated with carbon, and you get this gunmetal flashing, which is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's really quite beautiful. I'm also curious, I want to be able to show folks at home too, just what a drastic difference you're able to achieve with Sagar firing, going from either taking it from a carbon-rich environment, which we just showed them, but to an oxygen-rich environment. And would you mind maybe taking a moment to talk a little bit about this teapot with a hollow twisted handle?
Okay, this teapot has the exact same slip that is on the black piece. It becomes a reddish color when you fire it in the electric kiln where there's no saturation of carbon, and it turns a reddish orange. And you can see the comparison to the dust storm in the photo made by Ann McDonald. And I also used horsehair on this piece too. So I took it out of the kiln and I placed horsehair in strategic places on the pot.
Yeah, you can really see the beautiful, expressive, kind of almost it looks like calligraphy or writing on the surface from the horsehair there. And, I think it's such a beautiful interpretation of thinking about, dust storms in Lubbock. I think that's something that not a whole lot of people have experienced. But also too, thinking about the material that you're using to help create that service. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been able to use and collect over time to incorporate into your piece in terms of?
Yes, well, I got started doing that when I first moved to Lubbock. My first camping and hiking experience was in the lower Pecos wilderness. And I was just fascinated with all the minerals that were there and the different clays. So I started collecting these things and taking them back to my studio and experimenting. When I was in graduate school, I had a very influential instructor. His name was Karl Martz, M-A-R-T-Z, and we tested everything. And so I continue to do that. I'll go out and hike and bring stuff back and test it and see what it does, because everything does something. And so, and I'm still doing that now. And that's the way I approach my work, the surface on my work.
You've been able to get some really remarkable surfaces. I want to kind of also move on to another piece for people to see. And this is kind of a preface to that. What we're looking at now is a photo that you took, I believe, during your residency in Shigaraki of an anagama kiln. And can you explain to folks what exactly an anagama kiln is?
Yes, this was taken in Shigaraki, Japan, at the Shigaraki Cultural Park, Institute of Ceramic Studies. And it's a kiln that's built on a slope. It's very long, and you place wood into the front of the kiln. And this was fired over a 5-day period. And normally you don't use any glazes. The glaze comes from the ashes falling on top of the pieces. And the Shigaraki clay has quartz crystals in it. And if you fire it at a high enough temperature, the crystals begin to melt a little bit. And it's really a fascinating thing. Yeah. So fired it for 5 days.
To the piece that we have in the exhibition. And I believe we should be able to see this, just one moment. These are 2 of your tea bowls that you created while you were there.
Yes. So they were fired for 5 days, 5 days constantly stoking wood into the kiln. It's a remarkable firing technique.
That's an incredible experience. And I would imagine, you probably get to be quite close with everyone who's taking shifts.
Yes, you do.
That kiln.
And you take turns cooking and stoking the kiln, and you become fast friends over 5 days.
That's really, really great. I love just, you can really kind of see up close that beautiful atmospheric surface texture that you can get from the anagama firing. I'm curious, I'd love for people to be able to see the platter that you created while you were also in Shigaraki Blaze. Would you mind turning us on to this piece? Great. James, can you see the platter?
Yes, that's a raku fired platter. It's double wall, and it was influenced by looking at geese in cranes. And I really enjoy it very much. I kept that one because it became very special to me.
Well, and these forms are also kind of part of thinking through your lucid dream process as well, which is really kind of interesting how you're able to work with that in terms of incorporating these dreams into your work.
Yes, I keep a dream journal. And so if I have a dream that's really interesting, I'll either write it down, or if there are interesting images, I'll draw them, and then at some point they become part of the work. That's
great. I'd like to also move on to, as you're kind of continuing to experiment with some of your firing process, I'd love for people to see this beautiful bottle form that you created. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the surface design of this piece?
Yes, in 2002, I was a resident artist in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, they do something that's very interesting. When they're building high-rise buildings, they'll use bamboo scaffolding on the outside of the building. And it looks very precarious, but evidently it's very strong because the workers are carrying objects up the scaffolding. But I like that webbing around the building. So when I got home, I started playing with the idea of making a copper wire webbing around the piece and firing it. And so wherever the copper wire touches it, it leaves a mark. And that's where the inspiration for this piece comes from.
That's great. I'm going to share with people, you can kind of see a slide that you took a photograph from when you were in Hong Kong so that people can actually see that scaffolding. Let's see here. So people can take a quick look at that. And I know we're kind of getting close to time, so I wanted to leave room for just a few more minutes so that people could really see the process behind the fumed works that you're doing, because I think that they're really quite mesmerizing. And so here we can see some photos from your studio of kind of thinking through how you're working through that fuming process. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the slide on the left is right before I fume the piece. I'm fuming it with metallic salts, in this case, stannous chloride. So the piece is first fired, and then I take it out of the kiln and I wrap it with baling wire. And in this case, I'm using glass, broken glass, but I also use fiber, fiberfax or kale wool to mask off areas that I don't want the fumes to hit. And then I put it in the kiln and I take it up to 1700 degrees and then let it cool down to 850. And then I open the kiln up and I place 2 tablespoons of stannous chloride, which is a metallic salt, and it gives off a fume, and it changes the color from what you see on the left to what you see on the right. And it's archival. It will not fade over time. And it's a very dangerous chemical to use, so I wear a full face mask when I'm working with it, and I work in a very ventilated area.
It's really, it's kind of, it's very like luminous, you know, it really glows, I think, as light hits it, and it really is quite beautiful. And I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so that we can see actually some of your newer bottle forms that is using this technique. So as Blaze is kind of panning around these pieces, I'm really impressed by the scale of these pieces. They're quite large, and I would imagine also too that before they're fired, they're even larger because they'll shrink a little bit in size in the kiln, but you can really kind of see up close at these wonderful details of really looking at also too where you've been able to wrap the baling wire to kind of prevent the fuming from touching that surface. But could you talk a little bit about the surface design that you're creating at the top of these bottle forms?
Okay. The surface designs, they're sandblasted in some cases. I mask off the designs with automobile masking tape, and then I either sandblast them or I'll use a glass etching solution, which will etch off the top surface and expose what's underneath the glaze. And these pieces are glazed with 22 karat gold luster, and then wrapped in wire using the same concept that I use for the piece inspired by Hong Kong. And the images are bird forms and combining my interest in observing sandhill crane and Canada geese. And it's the concept or the idea of trying to create movement and visual interest in the piece.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice connection point between so many of your works and seeing some of these patterns repeated from piece to piece. And I really love kind of the additional depth that you're able to get from using this technique. That's really quite beautiful, as well as you can kind of see that Blaze is showing us a little bit there, these really nice, almost like drippy qualities in certain areas too, just from the gold that you're using. That's a really nice detail.
Thank you.
Well, fantastic. I hope this gives folks at home a little bit of a taste of James's solo exhibition. And we will hold the last couple of minutes for people to ask questions. I know I've been told that we're receiving multiple questions during this talk. But before we get to that, James, I'm kind of curious, this is kind of a question I think many of the artists are going to be asked as part of Texas Talks Art, but is there an artist that you really kind of want to point people towards, or someone that, you know, a Texas artist that you feel like you'd like people to know a little bit more about?
Yes, one of my favorite Texas potter is Randy Brodniks. And Randy and I have done workshops together many times, and he's a fantastic craftsman, a fantastic potter. And he also is a Cajun cook. And so whenever he has a workshop, he will cook, and it's just the most fabulous thing you can imagine. So he's one of the Texas potter that I really, really admire and appreciate.
That's wonderful. Thank you for introducing us to him. And I think Maria Lisa will be able to drop his website into the chat. Since it's already 12:30, I wanted to open the floor up. Maria Lisa, do we have any questions from our viewers?
Yeah, we had 2 questions.
Okay.
The first one was whether or not acidity in toilet paper affected the metallic surfaces, and what clay bodies does James use?
Okay, so one question is whether the acidity in the toilet paper affects the firing process, so the surfaces that you get when you're using that for Sagar firing.
Probably so. You know, it's kind of a mystery to me. I've been experimenting with all kinds of paper, and it seems like institutional toilet paper works best. The toilet paper that's really hard and very cheap. And I guess it's the amount of wood that's left in it or something, I'm not sure, but the coarseness of it. But yeah, and what was the other part of the question?
So the other part of the question is, I think people are curious to learn a little bit about
The clay.
Clay bodies you're using. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the clay body, I'm using a clay body that I mix up. It's 5 parts fire clay, 5 parts ball clay, 5 parts gold art, 1 part grog, and 2 parts grog and 1 part potash. And it allows me to fire to a high temperature and also to a low temperature.
That's great. That's amazing. How did you kind of come to finding? I mean, that's quite a mixture to be able to use. I guess just over the years, maybe experimenting.
Yeah, just trial and error, trying different things. The amount of grog keeps the pieces from cracking, and it's just, you know, a trial and error thing.
That's great. Maria Lisa, do we have any more questions? No, I think that those are all the questions that we have. James, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a pleasure speaking with you. It looks like you're very nice and cozy at home. I love the flyer in the background, but also seeing all of your beautiful works as well in your home. Thank you for opening your house up to us and for the opportunity to be able to speak with you. I would like to let folks know that we will have an opportunity to speak with James again. We have some more programming while the show is on view coming down the line in April. So please stay tuned for that. And of course, we would love for you to come visit Houston Center for Contemporary Craft to be able to see the exhibition in person. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and please stay safe, everybody. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Kathryn. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Pleasure working with you too.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.